Officer Daniel Carter had handled dangerous calls, violent confrontations, and sleepless nights during his 11 years on the force. But nothing prepared him for the tiny German Shepherd puppy that appeared out of nowhere and refused to leave his side. It happened just after sunrise, when the city was still quiet and the streets glowed softly under pale morning light. Daniel leaned against his patrol car, sipping burnt coffee and scanning the neighborhood out of routine, when he felt something brush against his boot. He looked down expecting a leaf or a stray cat. Instead, two wide, trembling eyes stared back at him. The puppy was impossibly small, its ears too big for its head, paws dusty, fur matted and uneven. It stood frozen for a moment as if unsure whether to run or stay. Daniel crouched slightly, lowering his voice. "Hey there, little guy. You lost." The puppy didn't bark or retreat. It simply took one shaky step closer and sat down, tail barely moving, eyes locked onto his face. Daniel frowned and glanced around the empty street. No owner. No leash. No sound except distant traffic. "You shouldn't be out here alone," he muttered. He straightened up, planning to radio animal control. But the moment he turned away, a sharp, desperate whine pierced the air behind him. He stopped. When Daniel turned back, the puppy was right behind him, panic flashing in its eyes as if terrified he would disappear. Daniel took one step forward. The puppy followed. He stopped. The puppy stopped. Something about the behavior made his chest tighten. "All right," Daniel said quietly. "What's your deal?" He walked toward the sidewalk, testing the situation. The puppy followed again, tiny legs scrambling to keep up. When Daniel increased his pace, the puppy did too, breathing fast, refusing to fall behind. This wasn't curiosity. This was urgency. Daniel entered a nearby convenience store to ask if anyone had reported a missing puppy. The bell chimed as he stepped inside. Almost instantly, a heart-wrenching cry erupted from outside. He turned and saw the puppy clawing at the glass door, body shaking, eyes wide with terror. The cashier laughed softly. "Looks like you got yourself a partner." Daniel didn't smile. He stepped back outside and the puppy rushed into his legs, pressing against his boot in pure relief. As Daniel knelt, the puppy looked up at him, fear and pleading written across its face. And in that moment, Daniel realized something was very wrong. Daniel tried to convince himself he was overthinking it. Stray puppies followed people sometimes. It happened. Still, as he walked down the street, the soft tap of tiny paws stayed glued to his heels like a shadow that refused to fade. Every time he slowed, the puppy slowed. Every time he glanced back, those wide eyes locked onto him with frightening intensity. A group of early morning joggers passed by, smiling at the sight. One of them laughed. "Looks like you've been chosen, officer." Daniel forced a polite nod, but his attention never left the puppy. Its ears stayed pinned back, body tense, scanning everything except him. It wasn't playful. It was alert. Daniel knelt again, this time more carefully. "Where did you come from?" he asked softly. The puppy stepped closer and nudged his knee, then suddenly turned and took a few quick steps away. It stopped, looked back and whimpered. Daniel stood. The puppy's tail twitched with nervous hope. "You want me to follow you?" Daniel murmured. The puppy tugged gently at his pant leg, not biting, not playing, just pulling with intention. Daniel felt a chill crawl up his spine. Lost animals didn't do this. They wandered. They hid. They cried. This one was leading. Daniel glanced around and rested a hand near his radio. "All right," he said quietly. "Show me." The puppy turned instantly and trotted toward a narrow dirt path cutting between overgrown bushes near an unused lot. With every step away from the street, the puppy grew more frantic, stopping often to make sure Daniel was still behind him. City sounds faded. Birds went quiet. The air felt heavier. The puppy froze suddenly, body stiff, ears straight up. A small whimper escaped its throat. Daniel crouched beside it, eyes scanning ahead. "What is it?" he whispered. The puppy shook, then nudged him again, urging him forward. Daniel stepped ahead carefully and noticed disturbed dirt, scuffed marks, and something caught on a low branch. A strip of fabric. Torn. Dirty. The same color as the frayed cloth tied loosely around the puppy's neck. His stomach tightened. The puppy circled the fabric, crying softly, then pressed its nose to the ground and moved forward again. Daniel followed, heart pounding harder with every step. A glint of metal caught his eye near the trail. He picked it up. A broken zipper pull. This wasn't random. Daniel swallowed and keyed his radio halfway, hesitating. Training told him to call it in. Instinct told him something worse waited ahead. He looked down at the puppy, shaking but determined, eyes burning with urgency. "You're trying to save someone?" Daniel whispered. The puppy barked once, sharp and desperate, and pulled him deeper into the trees. The trees closed in as Daniel followed the puppy deeper into the wooded area, branches clawing lightly at his uniform as if warning him to turn back. Sunlight thinned into pale streaks, and the ground beneath his boots grew uneven and soft. The puppy moved with surprising focus, nose low, stopping every few steps to check that Daniel was still there before continuing. Daniel's instincts screamed at him now. This was no longer about a lost animal. This was a scene. He scanned the ground carefully and spotted more signs, drag marks etched into the dirt, broken twigs snapped under force, footprints smudged and overlapping. Someone had struggled here. Someone had been pulled. The puppy whimpered and darted ahead, then stopped abruptly at the edge of a small clearing. Daniel slowed, heart hammering. The puppy stood frozen, staring ahead, body trembling so hard its legs nearly buckled. Daniel stepped beside him and felt his breath catch. The clearing was wrong. Leaves were scattered unnaturally. Branches were broken at waist height. A purse lay half buried under debris torn open, straps snapped clean in two. Daniel knelt and lifted it carefully. Empty. No wallet. No phone. Just dirt and the faint smell of perfume clinging to the fabric. Easy, he whispered, more to himself than the puppy. The puppy rushed forward, circling the purse, crying softly, then pressed its nose to the ground and followed a darkened trail. Daniel followed, dread pooling heavy in his chest. Then he saw it. Blood. Dried and smeared across the leaves. Daniel sucked in a sharp breath and reached for his radio. "Dispatch," he said quietly but urgently. "I have a possible abduction scene. Request immediate backup and medical. North Wooded Trail near 4th. Copy came back instantly. Units en route." The puppy suddenly bolted ahead, barking wildly. Daniel ran after it, pushing through brush until the forest opened slightly near a fallen tree. The puppy scratched desperately at the base of the trunk, crying in panic. Daniel dropped to his knees and swept leaves aside. An arm lay beneath the branches. Well, so. For a terrifying second, the world stopped. Then the fingers twitched. "She's alive," Daniel shouted, voice breaking. He pressed 2 fingers to her neck. A faint pulse beat against his skin. Weak but there. The puppy pushed its tiny body against her chest, whining, licking her face. Her eyelids fluttered. A faint sound escaped her lips. "Pip." Daniel swallowed hard. "Help is coming," he whispered. "You're not alone." Sirens echoed faintly through the trees. Officers burst into the clearing moments later, followed by paramedics. As they worked, lifting branches and stabilizing her injuries, Daniel sat back on his heels, shaking. He looked at the puppy, covered in dirt, trembling but unyielding. That's when the truth finally hit him. This puppy hadn't been following him. He had been begging him to listen. The ambulance doors slammed shut as sirens wailed through the morning air. Daniel sat inside beside the stretcher, the tiny puppy curled tightly against his chest, shaking but refusing to look away from the woman lying unconscious beside him. Paramedics worked quickly, calling out vitals, adjusting oxygen, stabilizing injuries. Daniel kept one hand resting gently on the puppy's back, feeling the rapid beat of his heart. At the hospital, doctors rushed the woman into surgery while nurses tried to take the puppy from Daniel's arms. He resisted at first, then looked down. The puppy clung to his uniform, eyes frantic, body trembling with fear. "He stays," Daniel said firmly. "He's family." Hours passed in a blur of white hallways, harsh lights, and silence broken only by distant footsteps. Daniel sat in a chair outside the operating room, Pip curled asleep in his lap for the first time since they met. Exhaustion finally crept in, but Daniel couldn't close his eyes. Every time he looked at the puppy, the morning replayed in his mind. The following. The pleading. The forest. The blood. A doctor finally emerged, removing her mask. "She's stable," she said. "Critical but alive." "If you'd arrived even 30 minutes later," she shook her head. Daniel exhaled shakily, his shoulders slumping with relief. When the woman woke later that night, weak but conscious, Pip was the first to know. He lifted his head and whimpered softly, climbing onto her bed. Her eyes filled with tears as she stroked his fur. "You came back," she whispered. Daniel stepped closer. "He never left you," he said gently. She told them everything. The attack. The van. Being dragged into the woods. How Pip bit one of the men and distracted them. How he stayed with her through the night, keeping her warm, crying for help. How he ran at dawn, injured and terrified, searching for someone who would listen. Daniel felt his chest crack open. Days later, as she recovered, she asked Daniel to keep Pip until she healed. "He trusts you," she said softly. "And I trust you too." Daniel didn't hesitate. "I'd be honored." As he carried Pip out of the hospital that morning, the puppy pressed his head against Daniel's chest, finally at peace. Daniel felt tears slip down his face, unashamed. He understood now. Some heroes wear badges. Some heroes are small, broken, and brave enough to never give up. And sometimes all it takes to save a life is listening to the one who refuses to let go.